Boston, March 5th, 1770. The air is bitter, the streets slick with ice and packed with snow. Night has settled in, but the city is not quiet. It hasn't been quiet for years. Footsteps echo, voices argue. A bell rings somewhere in the distance. And then, gunshot. By morning, 5 men will be dead. By year's end, an empire will be shaken. To understand the Boston Massacre, you have to understand Boston before the shooting. Since 1768, British troops had been stationed in the city. Officially, they were there to keep order. Unofficially, they are there to enforce unpopular laws, taxes passed by Parliament to pay for Britain's wars. To the people of Boston, these laws feel like punishment without representation. To the soldiers, Boston feels hostile. Jobs are scarce. British soldiers, paid little, take side work, competing with local labor. Fights break out in taverns. Insults are traded in the streets. Boston is a powder keg. All it needs is a spark. That spark comes late on March 5th. A young apprentice, Edward Garrick, accuses a British officer of not paying a debt. A sentry outside the customs house, Private Hugh White, intervenes. Words are exchanged, then fist. White strikes Garrick with his musket. The crowd gathers quickly. Someone rings a bell, a sound usually meant to warn of fire, but this time it draws people towards the conflict. Snowballs fly. So do insults. Bloody lobster, a slur for British soldiers. White calls for backup. Captain Thomas Preston arrives with 7 soldiers. They form a line in front of the customs house. The crowd grows. Dozens, then hundreds. They throw snow packed with ice. Some carry sticks, others clubs. The soldiers are scared. They are cold. They are isolated. Someone shouts fire. Preston later insists he never gave the order. A musket discharges, possibly accidental. Then another. Then another. In seconds, chaos replaces noise. 11 colonists are hit. 5 will die. Crispus Attucks, a dock worker from Africa and native descent, is shot twice and falls first. Samuel Gray dies instantly. James Caldwell is killed by a shot through the back. Samuel Maverick, just 17, dies the next morning. Patrick Carr lingers for weeks before succumbing. Blood stains the snow. The crowd scatters. The soldiers stand frozen, some in shock, some crying. Boston has crossed a line it cannot uncross. Captain Preston orders his men back to their barracks. The city is on edge. Governor Thomas Hutchinson appears before the crowd and promises justice. To prevent further violence, British troops are removed from the city center. Preston and the soldiers are arrested. Boston demands accountability, but what happens next may surprise many. The soldiers are put on trial for murder, and they are defended by John Adams, a future president and committed patriot. Adams believes something critical is at stake: the rule of law. He argues that the soldiers were provoked, that they feared for their lives, that a mob surrounded them. Witnesses testify to the chaos, to the snowballs, to the clubs. In December 1770, a verdict is delivered. 6 of the soldiers are acquitted. but 2 are convicted of manslaughter and branded on the thumb. Justice, Adam writes later, must not bow to rage, but there must be justice. But the trial does not end the story. Patriot leaders seize on the event. Paul Revere produces engravings, exaggerated, dramatic, showing soldiers firing information on innocent civilians. It spreads across the colonies. Pamphlets are printed. Speeches are made. This event is given a name, the Boston Massacre. It becomes propaganda, a symbol of tyranny, and symbols matter. The Boston Massacre does not start the American Revolution, but it changes something fundamental. It hardens attitudes. It turns political resistance into moral outrage. It gives the Patriot movement martyrs, and a story powerful enough to unify anger across the colonies. 5 years later, shots will be fired at Lexington and Concord. By then, no one will believe compromise is possible. The Boston Massacre was not inevitable. It was born from tension, fear, miscommunication, and pride. A street fight, a bad night, a single gunshot that became many. History remembers it not just for the blood spilled, but for what it revealed. That when power and resentment collide in the dark, even empires can bleed. And that when the government decides to kill, revolutions start.